People simply went mad borrowing. The extent of personal credit, personal wealth created on credit, was done between people, banks, a system that spawned greed.
If our own Taoiseach doesn't know the actual causes of the problems in Ireland, how can we expect this government to solve this crisis? And it starts to lead you to understand why our government are so enthusiastic about an austerity treaty.
Taoiseach, this is one of your big days. This is the day that you give another 1.25 billion euros to bondholders, at the same time as you impose savage austerity on the rest of citizens. You may know, Taoiseach, during the election campaign that this bond traded as low as 54 cents in the euro. I presume because the ratings agency believed Fine Gael and Labour would stick to their promises to burden share and to impose this on these senior bondholders. Taoiseach, will you name these bondholders? The Oireachtas has the right to know. The people have the right to know. All of those out there, whether it's rural communities hit by septic tank charges, bad hikes, elderly patients, whether it's the people in our maternity wards, the 500,000 unemployed, our immigrants, every single citizen in this state and this Oireachtas has the right to know the names of these bondholders that you're giving 1.25 billion of the people's money to.
I would like to think, Deputy Adams, and we had this out yesterday in advance of, as you say, a big day today. It's not, I don't like to see a situation where this kind of repayment has to be made to these bondholders. I do not have a list of names of who these bondholders are, and I'm quite sure that those who are in possession of these bonds, their names have changed quite considerably since they first acquired them. So I don't have a list of names.
Deputy Adams.
Well, Taoiseach, you say you don't know the names of the bondholders, and that's, with respect, not good enough. It's a disgrace. You know, what happened to the 5-point plan? What happened to all the openness in government? And the deference you show to these bondholders contrasts just sharply with the government's attitude to citizens. And we heard yesterday from Gerry Burke, a consultant obstetrician in Limerick, who warned that the loss of 47 midwives in the Midwestern Regional Maternity Hospital in Limerick next month may cause lives. So your ministers wax lyrical about the awful consequences if we don't pay this. Do you give any consideration to the social consequences of this being paid and us not being able to afford it? I've written this morning to the Comptroller and Auditor General asking him to investigate these payments, who they were made to, what profits were made, and whether he considered this an appropriate use of public funds. And would you ask, this is my question, Sean Collier, if the Taoiseach's government knew Anglo-Irish Bank was insolvent and he asked the Irish taxpayer to bail it out and pay the cost we are now paying for it, that was and is economic treason. I stand over that. Eamon Gilmore, leader of the Labour Party, you're Taoiseach. Do you support that proposition today?
Martina Anderson, the Ulster Council have decided to back Derry's bid for the All-Ireland Fleadh. What's your reaction to that?
I'm absolutely delighted, and there are thousands of people, not just in Derry, but I think across Ireland and beyond, really pleased that they had the maturity that was needed last night to review and reverse their decision, their original decision on Sunday. There were 2 days of intense discussions, engagements, negotiations had taken place, and it really was Team Derry. There were a lot of people involved behind the scene, But I think one of the things that took it over the line was the intervention by Martin McGuinness, who sent a letter last night to the Ulster Council. That letter and the contents of that letter was discussed at the meeting, and then they made the decision. And they overturned the original decision that they made on Sunday, and I think they made the correct decision. Now, we have a long way to go. We still have Saturday to get through, and there's a lot of discussions and engagements taking place in the city about how we need to make interventions and engage with members of the Ard Comhairle to lobby so that we can secure the necessary votes that's required to get Derry to be the first city in the north to hold the All-Ireland flag.
Okay, the coming year then for the City of Culture, if Derry is successful in this bid, what can the people of Derry and the people of Ireland and indeed the international market expect?
Well, they can expect one hell of a party for 2 weeks in our city of Irish music and culture and dance and history and fairs, and that's going to reverberate around the walls and throughout the city of Derry. Over 300,000 people could land in Derry, and we have a lot of organising to do in order to cater for those people, and cater for them we will. And for the city of Derry, it could bring over £40 million into the local economy. So I just don't want this bid to be an application that's going to the Ard Comhairle on Saturday. For me, it was always more than that. I want it in the bag. It's not in the bag yet, but I want us to bring it home with us.
So very much on Saturday, it's a case of stand up for Derry?
It's stand up for Derry, Seas Suas do Derry.
Taoiseach, today you intend ramming the Water Services Amendment Bill, or the Septic Tank Bill as it's known, through the Dáil, a measure that you know will impose great hardship on citizens in this state. I think the use of the guillotine to rush this measure through is cynical. You said a few moments ago that you were open to constructive suggestions in respect of any proposals, but in this particular case, you are rushing this legislation through without having taken or considered the very constructive and fair amendments brought by members of this Dáil. Now, I'm aware that the reality of what's happening today stems from a failure of successive governments, it has to be said, of Fianna Fáil, of Fine Gael and Labour, who failed to comply with the 1975 EU directive. And unfortunately today, what this Dáil tells rural Ireland is that it is the people who will pay for the failure of politics. This legislation should not go through without the full standards by which septic tanks will be assessed being agreed, published and understood, because in the absence of that, fear and panic has spread right across rural Ireland.
Please.
People fear that they will be faced with bills of several thousand euros that they simply cannot meet.
Order for the Speaker, please.
And Taoiseach, I, like you, support any measure that means that individuals and families, as you have just said, can see their way beyond hardship and debt.
Yes.
However,
Deputy,
this particular measure, advanced in the manner in which you had advanced it, not only causes the fear of further debt, but will in fact bring that reality. So I want to ask you, Taoiseach, how you defend a position that you will rush this legislation through without publishing the standards by which these septic tanks will be judged, and without crucially offering the reassurance to families and individuals that there will be a fully funded grant scheme to support those families should they have to make repair works to their septic tanks.
This issue dates back to 2009 and was not dealt with by the previous government. There is now a 3rd of February deadline within which the Water Services Bill must be enacted. We are facing a situation where the country is facing the possibility of fines, a lump sum a lump sum penalty of €2.7 million and daily fines of more than €26,000 if this legislation is not enacted and the way of dealing with septic tanks is not put in place. Now again, what the government is proposing is a reasonable measure. It's a once-off registration charge of €50 and it is an inspection regime that is quite reasonable, and we've in fact already seen in County Cavan an example of how that inspection regime has operated. It operates in a very reasonable way.
There isn't a person who doesn't accept, Taoiseach, that we have to guard the quality of our water and that you need a proper inspection regime. That's not the issue. And in fact, the registration fee itself isn't what's causing the difficulty. The problem is that the legislation that you are rushing through, and I repeat, you failed to take amendments from Sinn Féin and indeed from others on these matters, is very explicit, for instance, in the fact that up to €5,000 of a fine can be levied. There's no fudging on that. That's there black on white. But it is the absence of a spelt-out series of standards that will apply to the septic tanks that causes people deep concern. It is also the fact that should a household be faced with significant works to bring the septic tank up to standard, that the state is making absolutely no commitment to those families, the length and breadth of the state, that there will be a helping hand for them.
Sinn Féin today are fielding a number of amendments to the Water Services Bill, or the Septic Tank Bill as it's commonly known. We're opposing it in the Chamber. We're trying to change it in the Chamber. We're also supporting the protest that's ongoing here outside the gate with people, rural dwellers, who are outside protesting there today. We feel it's very important that the standards are outlined clearly for rural dwellers so as people know exactly what they're dealing with. We welcome the fact that the Minister has agreed to have a 4-week consultation period, but I think before that happens it would have been helpful if the Minister had to outline what the standards are that will guide the EPA inspectors when they're carrying out the inspections. I think allied to this, and the issue that corresponds with this, is the whole need for grants. Because if the government are going to force people and the EPA are going to force people to upgrade, you have to provide them with the means to do that. Many rural dwellers now are in negative equity. Many rural dwellers are facing a whole range of increased charges, school bus charges, higher energy costs, higher home heating oil costs. They're facing the household charge, they're paying a bin charge. They have charge after charge coming onto them, and it's really causing problems for them. So we must try and alleviate that. And the government can't come along on the one hand in this bill and impose up to a €5,000 fine, and on the other hand say to people in rural areas who are in negative equity and who may be on very, very low incomes, we're going to criminalise you if you don't comply with the standards that we're going to set out and that we're going to get the EPA to enforce. So there has to be a fair approach to this. Sinn Féin want to protect groundwater. We must protect groundwater, and we agree with the government on that. But we must do this in a fair way, and we must do this in a way to support rural dwellers, not to bear down on them and to press on them and to make their lives harder than it already is. And one benefit of this is that, along with protecting groundwater, if there was a scheme of grants to assist people, it would also help to provide jobs, badly needed jobs in construction in rural areas, carrying out remedial works on septic tanks and upgrading them. So we want a fair approach, we want an efficient approach, but we also want an approach that protects the environment and at the same time protects rural dwellers. And that's the difference. Sinn Féin believes that we can do that if we go about it the right way.